Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and today we are talking about the M5. This is a $2,800 US 5-driver in-ear monitor from Fur Audio. This was a loan to me by a friend of the channel. While it was in my possession, it sold to yet another person. So basically, as soon as I'm done filming this video here today, this is getting packaged up and heading out on its way to the new owner. So I do not get to keep this. Fur Audio has no idea that I have this in my possession. So all thoughts and opinions you are about to hear are mine and mine alone. So let's do shameless self-promotion, and then we'll come back on the other side and talk more about the Fur M5. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Please remember to hit that like button, and if you haven't, please subscribe. Also, I have a Patreon set up so that you can help support me on a monthly basis, and I've set up a PayPal donation so that you can help me out in that way too if a monthly subscription does not make sense for you. Links for all of that, including the benefits, in the description below. Please check those out. All right, on with the show. All right, so real quick, let me list some specs on this, and then we will cut to an overhead view where you get a close-up of what this thing looks like, how it's built, and I talk about features and comfort and build and all of that kind of stuff. So again, $2,800 US for this as a starting point. Fur Audio says that they have a bunch of customization options that they will not charge for on that. So I will link to their website down in the description below. So 5 drivers. It's called the M5 because it is from Fur Audio's M series, and it has 5 drivers per IEM. And they are divided this way. Each side has a dynamic driver for the bass. It has 3 balanced armatures dividing up a third, I think it's roughly a third each of the mid frequencies. And then there is an electrostatic driver for the high frequencies. Fur Audio claims that they were the first in the world to implement electrostatic drivers on in-ear monitors. I don't know if that's true, but that is what their website says. And then the rated impedance is 6.8 ohms, which is very low. There is no sensitivity measurement given on the website that I could find, but it is very, very easy to drive, and just a little bit, it's sensitive to noise floor on some gear, so keep that in mind just because of how sensitive it is and how low impedance it is. Okay, so there are a number of special features. There's a proprietary connector type to this thing. There is Fur Audio's own way of doing pressure relief and all kinds of stuff like that, which I will talk about in a clip here in just a moment where I do an overhead view, show you the build, and walk you through all of those things. Let me bottom line this one for you here near the top of the video, and that is this is really, really good. I think this unit here is a bit of a hidden gem. I don't hear it talked about a lot out there, like when I'm on HeadFi and so forth. Like I don't see the name Fur M5 come up very often, but it should. Okay. This has been the first IEM that I have tried that I could see myself reaching for in lieu of some headphones in some use cases where I would normally use full-size headphones, and that is a big thing coming from me because I am in general not a huge in-ear monitor fan, at least not compared to headphones. I recognize that IEMs have some specific use cases where they are top dog. Like if you're a frequent traveler and all of that, like you just can't beat an IEM for the ease of carrying it around and using it on the go and all of that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, that I found it to sound excellent, like reference caliber sound quality for the price point. It is comfortable, one of the most comfortable IEMs I've ever used, and that sort of thing. It's well built, well made, all of that. It's just all around a very solid package. So I will unpack all of that here throughout the course of the video and why I am explaining those, or why I am claiming those things and so forth. So let's cut to that overhead view and talk about the build and the features and the comfort. Here we go. Overhead and close-up shot to talk about the build and the accessories here for the Fur M5. And I will say right up front, these are SpinFit CP145 tips, the small size. These are the ones that I liked best and worked really well for me, which is becoming a common theme. This tip works well for me, so I will put a link in the description for those down below here in a minute, and that's what I did most of my listening tests on, so keep that in mind when we come around to talk about sound. But let's look at the build of the M5. So, focus camera, we get this metal plate here where we have the Fur Audio logo on one of them, and then of course the model number M5 on the other, and you can see it's highly reflective and shiny. So that's metal. I'm not sure what kind of metal. It's probably aluminum. Okay, it might be a very light steel. I'm not sure. And then the rest of the shell is plastic, but a pretty durable, solid feeling plastic. Okay, at that. All right, pop the tip off here. You can see how long the nozzle is. Now, Fur specifies that this is what they call a tubeless design. So there's not actually tubes redirecting the sound in there, is my understanding. Now, I'm not super sure what tubeless means. They are a bit tight-lipped about that on their website. So I don't know what to tell you on that one. Okay, here we have the connector type. It looks like an MCX connector, but this is actually Fur Audio's own, and I believe it's proprietary, RCX connector method. And then you see right there we have, this is, focus camera, come on, okay. This is the, stay focused camera, this is the pressure release system in here, these two holes right there. They have, again, a proprietary system for pressure relief, and that is, they call it the ATOM, ATOM. And this is the third generation of that system, if I understand their website correctly. Okay, let's talk about this RCX connector here. What is that? It looks kind of like an MMCX connector. And I have my Dunu Vulcan over here, which is not on the same level sonically as the M5. But just to show you the difference, this is the Vulcan on the left here, and it has the MMCX connector, where this has, the Fur has the RCX. And you can see the MMCX is completely round, right? Whereas the RCX has that square, okay, connector on it. The MMCX is completely round. Okay, now what does that mean? Well, when you plug the cable into the M5, there is no rotation here, okay? None at all. Whereas with an MMCX connector, okay, you can completely rotate this thing around, okay, like so. So that is one key difference there. All right, I don't know if there's any sonic benefit to that kind of connector. There may or may not be. Vulcan, you need to go. Okay, but it feels like a little bit more stable and rigid, and while it's very secure and doesn't wiggle around a whole lot more, it actually is kind of easier to just pull off there. Okay, so it stays in place well, but it's, if you're going to swap cables a whole lot, it's easier and just pops in and out pretty easy once you get it lined up, of course. Okay, all right, let's talk about these stock cables then and the accessories. Nice carrying case that it comes with. Pops off like this. You get a bunch of different ear tips in there. I didn't really use them because then I use these spin fits. Okay, there's plenty of room in here for the IEMs in like one cable. You can fit both of these cables in here. I'll talk about the cables in just a minute, but it gets pretty tight. Hey, that's pretty nice and secure, solid. Okay, nice thing to carry them around in. All right, here's the stock cable. This is a 3.5 millimeter single-ended TRS connector. We have this nice weave in like a vinyl or plastic kind of covering here. All right, and then we have the, okay, there's the fork. We've got one of these little gizmos on it, so you can like tighten it up, loosen it up around your chin and that sort of thing. And then, yeah, we have the hooks that go around the ears here with, so show you the other end of the RCX connector there. Okay, like that. This stock cable is pretty good. I didn't have any issues with it really. It doesn't tangle up very much. Okay, it seems to sound pretty decent as far as stock cables go. This is definitely among the better that I have used. Okay, so that's nice. But if you're not satisfied with that, Fur Audio sells what they call their Scorpion cables here. There's like a Scorpion, and then there's one tier up. It's Scorpion something. There's another word after that. I forget what it is at the moment, but it will be on the website. You can link down below. Starting at 199 USD for this, so basically 200 USD for this cable. This one is a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced, of course, and you see it's actually thinner, and it's got a different cover on it and a different weave than the stock cable that I just showed you. Okay, all of that still, I mean, it's good about not tangling and that sort of thing. Oh, of course, as I say that, one side got looped around the other, but that should come out pretty easily. Yep. Okay. One of these tightening, loosening gizmos here again. Okay, and then of course we have the RCX here. So the claim on the Scorpion series cable is that it has twice the number of conductive strands as a normal cable here, which leads to half the amount of resistance, of DC resistance in here. At least that's the claim. I didn't measure this out or anything. And that does matter for a IEM like the M5, because the M5 here, if I hadn't mentioned already, this may be a repeat, but again, it's like 6.8 ohms nominal impedance. So like if a cable resistance is like a single ohm, that's a pretty large percentage of just under 7 ohms, and that will start to affect the sound. So you want as low a resistance cable as possible. Okay, and so the claim to fame with the Scorpion is that it is very, very low resistance compared to other IEM cables. And so that's why you get a sonic benefit from it and why you'd want to use that. Also, of course, if you go with the RCX connector, I mean, you kind of have to, because that's proprietary to Fur. Okay. Let's see, are there any other build items that I need to talk about? I mean, I guess while I'm here, I'll talk about comfort, and I found these to be quite comfortable. Like, I have comfort issues with IEMs generally speaking, but this one has been among the better ones, and I like the combination of the nozzle length and diameter here, okay, with the spin fit tip, and then the pressure relief and all of that that's on here. Like, it was pretty comfortable, and I was able to get a couple of, like, you know, 2+ hour long sessions in there without any major comfort issues, and that is pretty rare for me and an IEM. So and that's good, because again, this is a what, $2,800 unit or model, and so if you're gonna spend money like that, you want to be able to use these for a while. And at least for my ears, and again, I have pretty narrow ear canals, which is why I use the small tips, and I think contributes a lot to why I have so many comfort issues with IEMs. Like, this one is pretty good. Okay, so that's not nothing, and again, particularly at this price. All right, I think that's good for the build of this thing, the unit tour, the features and the accessories and all of that. Will come back to me on camera, where I will talk about what source gear I used for these and the sound. Okay, let's get to it. Source gear that I used for testing on the M5 was mostly my Cord Hugo 2, which was fed by a Cord 2Go streamer, and then using Rune to cast to the streamer, using lossless FLAC files, either 1644.1 all the way up through 24-bit 192, and some DSD local files in there as well. And then I also used my Canon N6 Mark II DAP with EO2 module a fair bit. And then I tried this on a desktop setup using my Berkeley Alpha Series 2 DAC and Vioelectric HP V281 amplifier. I should mention that the Canon N6 Mark II would have been using local FLAC and DSD files using the USB Audio Player Pro app. And then also, like, my desktop setup would have also been fed via Rune using a Svanar Ultra Rendu streamer routed through a Singer SU6 DDC. Okay. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the sound of this thing. The overall sound signature here from a perceived frequency response standpoint is pretty neutral, but with crazy good frequency extension, both in the lows and in the highs. So I really did not get a sense that there's a frequency range in the audible spectrum that is really emphasized in terms of presence above any of the other ranges. But it just always struck me that these just dug incredibly deep down in the lows and then reached up incredibly high in the upper frequencies too. So just a crazy amount of frequency extension. Now, you could possibly convince me that there's just ever so slightly a sub-bass shelf here, maybe. The bass is very strong and robust and reasonably impactful. It's not like hit you super hard physical like on the headphone side, like a Focal headphone or a Fosdax headphone is going to be. But like there is a decent amount of oomph to that low end and some good healthy like physical hit to it down there, and then like it rumbles pretty well. And again, you might be able to convince me that there is just a slight elevation in that sub-bass region. But I'm a bit on the fence about that one because I just called this one neutral. I don't think there is. Like to me, it still sounds like it's probably neutral. But if you were to measure a slight bass shelf, I could also believe it. Okay, so we'll go with that one there. The mids are very smooth and well balanced. I really never got any kind of sense of shout or honk out of these things, which I often do with head-based listening transducers and so forth. And the treble is also well balanced in its tonality, like the relationship between fundamental frequencies and harmonics feels pretty spot on. The timing aspects like attacks and decays through the full frequency range is pretty good too. So you put those together with strong tonality and strong time domain behaviors, and you get really good timbre out of this as well. Detail retrieval also is excellent. It does not sound forced to me, although it is a little bit more detail forward than some people are going to like. I don't think, again, to me, it doesn't reach a point where it's like ever sounds forced or unnatural in its detail retrieval, but it will be more forward than some other things out there. So some may find it a little bit on the aggressive side. I did not, but you might. Okay. But like you put that together too with the excellent resolution, and you get a lot of well-textured sounds, like the bass that I just mentioned, having healthy quantity and like rich tonality, also has very good texturing. Ghost notes from drums and room reverbs and all of that from the recording studios and all of that are just all resolved very well. So there's just a lot of information in the sound. And again, I think it strikes a nice balance of bringing those out without it sounding too forward or too aggressive, at least to my ears there. Okay, the spatial presentation here is another strength. Like these cast a very wide sound stage. They are quite big sounding, and then they do a very good job with the imaging and the separation and the layering. Okay, so the positional effects there in there as well. Okay, really solid in there. So like I'm kind of gushing about the sound here a little bit, and I think that is warranted because the ceiling on the performance here is really, really high. And like I said, reference caliber audio quality earlier, and I think that is true. Like I think this could very well be a reference caliber performer, at the $2,500 to $3,000 price range. Like in there, it's that good. Okay, at least to my ears. Okay, so like what are the drawbacks here of this thing then? Because I've already talked about how comfortable it is and that sort of thing. Well, it is very revealing, right? Like it goes off the rails a little bit when either the source gear or the recording that you're putting into it is not great. It's very much a garbage in, but then even more garbagey out kind of a situation. So it does not save bad source gear or bad recordings in any way. There were several tracks that came on that just like, particularly in the upper mids, lower treble, if they were not well recorded, there could be a lot of bite going on that would just get very sharp and very fatiguing very quickly. And again, like this, so you put a well-recorded track through my Hugo 2, okay, into these things, and they can just sound absolutely stellar. Like there was a version of the classical piece Flight of the Bumblebee that came on in my Rune Shuffle, and I'll try to find it and link to the YouTube video of it down below so you know which one it is. Okay, but like it just sounded amazing. Just the holography of it, I was there almost. Like it just sounded really, really good. Just the detail, the way the detail is presented, the holography of the spatial presentation, the timbre, and all of that was amazing. But even something that I normally consider a fairly decent recording, like I was listening through to the Led Zeppelin album In Through the Outdoor, which is a 24-bit 96 kilohertz FLAC. Like there, you know, it's a remastered version, which isn't terrible, but boy, there was some sharpness, there was some sibilance, and a lot of bite in the upper mids, lower treble going on with that one that through both the Hugo 2 and the N6 Mark II that just made it too much and fatiguing quickly. So that's the drawback of this one, is that you do have to be careful what you're feeding it, because like it can sound amazing and then it becomes rather unpleasant when the source gear or the recording is not good. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, here. So in terms of matching it to good source gear, like I just said, like it responds well to my Hugo 2 when you give it a good clean signal. If the recording isn't good, that particular combination gets really brutal really fast, because the Hugo 2 is very incisive and a little bit more forward in its detail presentation, all that. And so you can kind of double dip on that trait with this one, which makes those bad recordings stand out as bad even quicker. But on the flip side, when you get a good recording, all of that, it just becomes phenomenal, okay, as a pairing there. The N6 Mark II with an EO2 module is a little bit warmer and smoother than the Hugo 2, but it is not nearly as resolving. But even on that setup here, like I think the M5 overall in its signature benefited from a little bit more warmth and smoothness on the source end. But yeah, again, wasn't quite as resolving. Still sounded pretty good on that combination, but also was it still suffered from that like harshness and sharpness and fatiguing going on in the upper mids, lower treble, with recordings that weren't so hot. Okay, on the desktop gear that I mentioned, plugged it into the VAIO HPA V281, and again got the sense that these things do respond a little bit better and a little bit more. What's the word I'm looking for? Not like a little, just slightly more forgivingly if you put them on a warmer amp, warmer source gear. That's not quite as detail forward. They respond well to that. The issue that I had with the V281 is that the noise floor is a little bit too high for these 6.8 ohm IEMs. Like particularly in the right channel, I was hearing a buzz and just hearing the noise of the system. Now, I keep my V281 at its normal like stock gain setting, which is 0 dB, not a plus. But it has both positive and negative gain stages on it that I could have accessed. I just didn't drop it to the negative gain to listen to these anymore. Mostly because that's some work to reach around back there and flip those dip switches. But then also I just keep my VAIO where it is because it usually covers a range big enough that it's useful for reviewing work, at least in terms of its gain stages. But the point remains is that that amp showed me a couple of things. That one, yes, these do respond well to warmth, and two, they are super sensitive and will show the noise floor in a hurry if you don't have also really quiet source gear. Okay, so there's that. Now, I like to talk about comparisons on this channel. I don't have a ton of comparisons with this one because I have not heard a ton of IEMs up near this price. I do have the $2,000 US Hi-Fi Svanar in for review here, and I did go back and forth between these two, mostly on the Hugo 2 and the N6 Mark II, as I just noted there. And I just prefer the M5 to my ears. I prefer its sound signature. I just like it sounds a little bit more natural and real to me for the most part. Okay. It is less forgiving yet than even the Svanar, which is sometimes on the unforgiving side in that same frequency range of the upper mids, lower treble. Okay, I think they are similar in terms of their width, their soundstage size. Their lateral holography is very close. I think the M5 is a little bit better at depth, but not by much, just a little bit. Okay. And I do think the M5 is a little bit more resolving and just overall sounds slightly more natural to me. So there's one comparison that I can give you. I'm still working on building up my IEM repertoire here a little bit. But back to the M5. Really impressed me. Really comfortable. One of the most comfortable IEMs that I've ever used. The sound is really good. They are unforgiving. So that's their one sonic downfall, if you will, is that they will scream at you a little bit if your source gear or the recording quality is not up to snuff. Okay, but you put good quality recordings from good quality source gear through these things, and boy, they can sound spectacular. Okay, so I will go ahead and leave it there. I am Wave Theory. This has been my review of the Fur M5 in-ear monitor. Please like this video if you haven't yet. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Leave a comment down below, yeah, check out my PayPal, check out my Patreon. Do those things you do to support YouTube channels, and as always, enjoy the music.